There are some faces that audiences remember, and then there are faces that seem to stay with you long after the screen goes dark. For millions around the world, one of those faces belongs to Jonathan Roumie. Calm, mysterious, filled with a kind of quiet intensity that doesn't need a shout to be heard. Today, people recognize him from The Chosen, a series that became more than television, more than entertainment, more than anyone expected. But what most people never see is what happened before the fame, before the interviews, before the standing ovations, before millions of viewers around the world knew his name. There was uncertainty, there were closed doors, there were nights of doubt when the dream felt impossible. Because Jonathan Roumie's story isn't the story of overnight success. It's the story of a man who kept walking, even when nothing around him suggested he should. A man who came dangerously close to giving up. A man who faced rejection, financial struggle, and the crushing silence that comes when your biggest dream refuses to answer. And yet, somehow, that silence became the beginning of everything. This is not just the story of an actor. This is the untold story of a man whose hardest seasons shaped the role that would eventually change his life. And maybe change the lives of millions more. Fade into the beginning. Long before the world saw him on screen, before international fame, before people associated his face with one of the most recognized spiritual roles in modern television. Jonathan was simply a young man with a dream. Born in New York City, he grew up surrounded by culture, creativity, and the energy of a city that never stopped moving. The city was loud, fast, demanding, and in many ways, it shaped him. As a child, creativity wasn't just a hobby. It became a language, a way of seeing the world, a way of understanding people. While others chased predictable futures, Jonathan felt pulled towards storytelling, toward performance, toward creating something that could move people emotionally. But dreams in the entertainment industry rarely come with guarantees, and sometimes they come with a price. This was only the beginning. Dreams are easy to talk about when they're working, when people are cheering, when opportunities seem to appear at exactly the right time. But the real test of a dream begins when nothing happens. And for Jonathan Roumie, that test lasted far longer than most people realize. In the early years of his career, he did what thousands of actors do: auditions, callbacks, small roles, voice work, commercial projects, independent productions. Each opportunity carried a tiny spark of hope. Maybe this is the one. Maybe this changes everything. Maybe this is the moment people finally see what I can do. But Hollywood doesn't reward hope. It rewards endurance. And endurance can be brutal. One audition after another. One "will call you" after another. One opportunity followed by silence. And in the entertainment world, silence can feel louder than rejection. Because at least rejection gives you an answer. Silence gives you questions. Am I good enough? Am I wasting my time? How much longer can I keep doing this? For many actors, this is where the dream ends. Not with one giant failure, but with hundreds of invisible disappointments. And Jonathan was living through all of them, while others seemed to be moving forward. He was fighting battles no audience could see. Bills, uncertainty, career pressure, and perhaps the hardest battle of all, watching time move forward while your breakthrough never arrives. There were moments when the dream felt fragile. Moments when logic said, walk away, find something stable, something safer, something predictable. Because chasing purpose can be inspiring. But chasing purpose while your bank account is shrinking, that's a different kind of pressure. A pressure that tests identity itself. And yet, even during those difficult years, something inside him refused to fully let go. Because sometimes, the hardest seasons are not there to stop you. Sometimes, they're preparing you for something you cannot yet see. What Jonathan didn't know was that the role that would change his life was already moving closer. And when it arrived, it wouldn't just transform his career, it would transform his purpose. There comes a moment in almost every dream when passion meets reality, and reality asks a brutal question. How much longer can you keep going? For Jonathan, that question became impossible to ignore. The acting world had taken years. Years of effort, years of sacrifice, years of showing up without guarantees. And there were moments, very real moments, when walking away seemed reasonable, maybe even necessary. Because when your future feels uncertain, even the strongest people begin to question themselves. But sometimes, life waits until your lowest point before opening the door you were meant to walk through. And that door was about to appear. Sometimes, the opportunity that changes your life doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look like destiny. At first, it looks like just another audition, just another script, just another chance in a career full of chances that led nowhere. And when Jonathan Roumie first stepped toward the project that would later become The Chosen, no one fully understood what it would become. Not the cast, not the audience, not even the creators. At that moment, it was simply another production, another role, another opportunity. But this role was different, because this role carried weight, history, emotion, responsibility. He wasn't stepping into a character people had never seen before. He was stepping into one of the most recognized figures in human history. And with that came pressure, immense pressure, because no matter what he did, people would have opinions. Some would criticize, some would compare, some would reject it before they ever gave a chance, and others would expect perfection. This wasn't just acting anymore. This was something deeper, something that demanded more than performance. It demanded vulnerability. It demanded sincerity. It demanded truth. And when Jonathan approached the role, he didn't try to make it louder. He didn't try to make it theatrical. He didn't try to force greatness. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He made it human, quiet, compassionate, strong without aggression, powerful without noise. And when cameras started rolling, something unexpected happened. People connected, not just with the story, but with him. Audiences around the world began to watch, then share, then tell others. And what started as a small project began turning into something global. Episode by episode, success changes many people. But sometimes, success doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've always been. For Jonathan Roumie, fame brought attention, recognition, crowds, interviews, and millions of people who suddenly wanted to know the man behind the screen. But behind the cameras, behind the applause, behind the headlines, there was still the same man who once sat in uncertainty, wondering if his dream was already over. And maybe that's why audiences connected with him so deeply. Because what people were seeing wasn't just acting, it was struggle, turned into purpose, pain, turned into presence, silence, turned into impact. As The Chosen continued reaching audiences across the world, messages began arriving from people whose lives have been touched. Families, students, artists, people going through loss, people searching for meaning, people who felt unseen. And in those messages, a pattern began to appear. It wasn't only about the performance. It was about what the performance made people feel. Hope, reflection, peace, connection. And maybe that's what made Jonathan's journey different from many others in entertainment. His story wasn't only about becoming successful. It was about becoming ready. Because the years of rejection, the unanswered calls, the financial pressure, the uncertainty, none of it was wasted. Every setback had shaped him. Every disappointment had built something deeper. And when the world finally gave him the stage, he was prepared to carry the weight of it. That's the part people often miss about success. They see the spotlight, but they never see the years spent in darkness learning how to stand in it. Jonathan Roumie's story reminds us of something powerful. Sometimes the dream takes longer because you're becoming the person who can handle it. Sometimes closed doors are not rejection. Sometimes they're preparation. And sometimes the role you were meant for finds you only after life has tested whether you're ready to carry it. Today, millions know his face. Millions know his name. But the most powerful part of his story, it isn't the awards. It isn't the interviews. It's the fact that he kept going when almost everything around him suggested he shouldn't. And because he did, a story that nearly ended in silence became a story heard around the world. This is the untold story of Jonathan Roumie. And maybe it's also a reminder that your hardest chapter may be preparing your greatest one. Fade to black.